Rockingham County Government and Spectrum 1304 present You've Got Grit. You've Got Grit, Bobby Stanley of Stoneville, North Carolina. You've got grit. What is grit? Now, I bet that's a word you've heard before, but according to one dictionary, grit means courage, bravery, pluck, mettle, backbone, spirit, strength of character, strength of will, moral fiber, steel, nerve, fortitude, toughness, hardiness, resolve, resolution, determination, tenacity, perseverance, endurance, guts, spunk. You've got grit. Bobby Stanley of Stoneville, North Carolina. We're presenting Bobby Stanley of Stoneville, North Carolina. Who is Bobby Stanley?
I'm Bobby Ray Stanley. I was born in Patrick Springs, Virginia, January the 11th, 1939. That was Tudor's Orchard. We moved to North Carolina in January of 1946 from Martinsville, Virginia, and pretty much lived in Stoneville other than military time and a little bit of time after the military in High Point. And I chose to come back to Rockingham County.
So why did you choose to come back to Rockingham County?
Rockingham County is a good place to live. It's a good place to work and play. It's always been good to me. I had an opportunity where I worked at to transfer 2 or 3 times and would have financially been butt off, but I chose the right decision when it was all panned out to stay in Stoneville, North Carolina.
What is it that you really love about Stoneville?
It's low profile. And it used to be economic. You know, downtown was pretty busy, of course, since 2001, when all this business left. It slowed down some. It's still a good place to live.
What about your family?
My family, like me and my wife, 4 children and 9 grandchildren. And, well, I'll be 81 years old, 82 years old, January 11th. She'll be 80 January 12th. And we got 4 children. The oldest one lives in Eden, Renee. And Kathy, the mayor of Stoneville, lives in Stoneville. Robert, the fire chief in Shiloh, lives right behind us. We got a farm there. And JJ, the youngest, is a nurse at Moses Cone in recovery. And the grandchildren, out of them, 2 of them lives in Greensboro. 1 is in Alaska working, and the rest of them's right around here. And 3 of them are registered nurses. The 2 of them work at Cone, 1 in West Lawn, and I got 1 in nurses training at East Carolina right now. That's Robert, the boys. It's 3 girls and 1 boy. And they've done very well. They were taken to church. I'd say out of 52 Sundays, I worked a lot on Sunday at my job. My wife took them to church at least 47 or 48 times out of the year. They know the difference in wrong and right. And they have, I have never spent a night awake worrying about one of them being off into something they didn't need to be into. So I'm a firm believer in family life, and I'm a firm believer in going to church. That's a good part of it.
What do you think families really need?
What we really need
as families?
I think, I'm going to just explain this in my personal opinion. In this country, family life is a whole lot of our problems. You know, as a man, I think a man different from a woman. We know they're different, but we've got responsibilities, and we should do our responsibilities. That's to take care of our families and our children. It's critical. And, some people disagree with what I'm fixing to say. I'm going to say it anyway. They're taking prayer out of school, And Bible reading out of school was the beginning of a change in family life. A child's got to be raised up to know the difference in wrong and right. And they've got to be raised up to be truthful and to really support themselves. I like to read. I read an hour, 2 hours every day. And it's not funny papers I read. The stuff that matters, history books and newspapers and things up to date. And this international trade of the World Trade Order, it's really, in healthcare, it's really hurt both ends of it. These plants around here, most of them had health insurance. And now you got 2 million, probably 2,200,000 on Medicaid. You wouldn't have that if you still had them jobs. And that's my personal take on it. And we're not going to change it a whole lot. It's there to stay. But
You've been very involved in Rockingham County. You just mentioned that you had served on the planning board and then you ended up as a county commissioner. Tell us about that.
it was, that's very interesting. I retired July the 30th, 1999 from the job and was appointed to the planning board the first day of September 1999. That's very fast. And the way the process works, and we'll go back to, I think 1988, May is when the county was zoned, so everything was following in line. And to get, it's hard to understand things if you've never been there. But being on that planning board, and that's about regulation, land use, and so forth, at that time, it was a right smart of development going on in Rockingham County, so you had a lot of meetings, and some of them high-profile stuff. Everybody don't like what you're doing and the way you vote, but it's still very interesting. As a county commissioner, you got the financial end of it, taxes and finance, and then oversee on land use and so forth, setting tax rates or whatever the case may be. It was a very, very good learning process. It takes a while to pick that up at big, and you don't feel real comfortable for about a year or so, and then you start memorizing everything, and it gives you more flexibility how to do your job. And I read everything that came to the house from the county, and I've still got most of those materials and go back to where it was all coming from, and I could look it up. It might take me a while. I was the last 2 years co-chair of that courthouse up here, and I was the chair of the Animal Shelter Oversight Committee, chair of that library in Madison Mid-End. And I still know the figures, how much it cost. The financing end of it, my understanding they refinanced it out, the interest rate come down, but it's a pretty good rate the first time, And it was a lot of people didn't like the courthouse. One way, especially, was it too big or too little? Most of them thought it was too big. As time goes on, Rockingham County is starting to, I think people are starting to move here. This place is starting to improve. We've got 300 jobs coming to Eden. There's 205 jobs up there just north of the state line on 220 when Fields plumb out. So it requires housing. So I think the courthouse will probably fit in real good in the next 10 years of being about right. That was what you try to do. And the environmental end of the courthouse was LEED certified at gold. It uses the sunlight of Mother Nature as much as possible. Them old trees out front are still there. That is very good. And the watering system there, I guess it still works okay to catch from the roof or whatever to help keep that grass green. I think, and them metal detectors, we'll put them in that. I was on the jury when I won the primary before the general election in 2006. And we've been out all day, the man and come back told us, any of you men that's got pocket knives, we'd appreciate if you leave them at home. that woke me up. I said, man, I could have a 38 pistol, it would have been the same thing. And we need to protect the people the jurors don't have a choice about it. And the people in that courthouse, whoever they may be. So the metal detectors was put in down there, and it was contracted outside as cheap as we could do it. And they went on up here. It's pretty precise up here. That courthouse is built for safety too. Prisoners and jury or whatever is not where they can sort of mix no more. They come up separate places. And it's got high tech in it. Even the district attorney we have today told me that it's the nicest courthouse he's been in. And so he done a rotary program. That's really.
You mentioned how much you read every day, and we've heard you present at various meetings, like at Rotary, about the presidents. And how did that? Is that like a hobby for you?
It's very exciting. I think history is very important. From the start of this country, it's been some things going on that weren't real nice, but everything works itself out as time goes on. I really like that presidential stuff. It was Ants on Jeopardy this week. I watch Jeopardy about every night. Who was the president in 1912? Ex-president, or running for president at that time. They got shot in the chest and continued the debate. And I knew that right off. Two of them didn't. It was Theodore Roosevelt. Called his wife and told him he'd been shot in the chest, but he was okay. Some of them really made things happen. And he was one of them.
And so you have been studying, and you've had this great interest in our United States presidents for years and years.
Right, yes ma'am. From the start of it, now when I worked all the time.
Yes, sir.
I put in close to 100 hours a week. That's counting at motel time. And my kids grew up in the Bakersfield. We done that on the side, and I still got about 40 cows. I used to keep much more than that. And they kept one of the best things me and my wife ever done was something about mom and the children, mom, dad, and the children all sweating together. It's just something about it. They turned out exceptionally well, and I think that had something to do with it too. And it taught them the value of a dollar bill is very important. It's a lot more money today than it was when I grew up. I carried newspapers in Stone. And I had to get up every 4 o'clock in the morning to get them newspapers about 100 in the morning, get them off, and get to school on time. But I always had a little change in my pocket. Back then you could buy a drink for a nickel and a moon pie for a nickel. And I went to Smokies when I was 17. I didn't smoke too long. And they were 25 cents a pack. I quit their deal February 1967. About 7:30 in the morning, Greensboro, I smoked the last. I'd been in a poker game, lost $20. I was mad. I don't like to lose stuff. Kathy wasn't quite born, my daughter, Kathy, and that was really concerning me. I already had one. I didn't tell the child not to smoke, not to drink, not to cuss when you piled up doing it. So I just stopped it all. And I know I wasn't much of a drinker, but I used to get hot-headed, get mad sometimes and say something I shouldn't say. I just cut it all out, and it worked. Your children, your family, with the exception of making a commitment to eternity, I'm talking about Jesus Christ, your family is next. It should always be like that. And that's the way I think.
Did you ever envision that one of your children would end up being in the political realm too?
Well, Kathy works for Remington Arms. I think the job, don't look good. She's in the credit department of finance. But Kathy's pretty smart. She's real energetic, she keeps up with things. Everybody's strong. If they don't know it yet, they will know it. You know, that's just the way she is. And that boy of mine, Marie, Robert, and Kat and JJ, they're good with numbers. And they're good at what to do. And good training. Raising them right. And Kathy went to school and never missed a day either. And between Robert and JJ, I think it was 3 days missed. One of them missed 2 and one of them missed 1.
Perfect attendance.
Yeah, and Kathy's boy, Hunter, he's in the military in Kuwait right now, but he never missed a day either. That was on the top of the front page of the newspaper right after the graduation time. That's pretty good. You know, the way I look at it, you pay taxes, and schools is one of the very important parts of taxes. And they wasn't going to lay around somewhere and lay out or whatever. They was going to get all we could get out of the education process. And so they did. Now, the oldest one got married, I think, in 12th grade. And I couldn't control her no more, you know. And I want to make a statement about education schools, Rockingham County. People talk, say whatever they want to. We got good elementary schools. A lot of them fairly new buildings. We got good schools on average all the way around. And I really think the teachers or the superintendent, whatever, does a good job. I got to know Dr. Shotwell. I used to talk to him some. And on these active boards, we work with that top 3 counties. There's 115 school districts in the state. We was in the top of it, getting them in every classroom. On the Chromebooks, he got $900,000 from the Golden Leaf and $1 million from the Rachel Larry Foundation. And public taxes didn't pay for neither one. These were paid for through other processes that somebody had to apply for it. On technology, and we live in a technology world today. It's very, very important these schools stay on top of this. I think they're doing pretty good at it. And I think as people come back to Rockingham County and look at our school system, they'll see that. And the county's pretty well run. It's still pretty well run. When I was on the board, we went through a transition. It went through a tremendous transition period. A lot of industry was leaving. Fieldcrest went bankrupt right before I went on it. Cone Mills went bankrupt. Burlington went bankrupt, and Guilford Mills. And I Guilford down on Blanchard, but people could live here and work there, and the other 3 was involved some. It was a transition period. It was hard. Watson Rexstraw used to talk to me. He was a county commissioner back in the mid-70s, I think. The revenue growth then was probably 4 or 5% a year or whatever. And the whole time I stayed here, it may have been around 1 or 1.5%. It just wasn't there. And it causes, you know, you have to scratch. You have to think. And you have to tighten up. When I was on that board, man, it's not only me, the board in general does it. Mental health was privatized. And the county health care and all was self-insured. It went up to, you had to do something. All this stuff was taking place to control the finance, or to get it to where you could pay your bills. You have to change with the changing times. You have no choice. You know, I took a lot of heat over taxes. The courthouse tax structure at 5 cents was done before I went on that board. A lot of people don't know that. But the taxes when I went on the board, some things was going on. It was sort of behind and all. I'd done something. Boy, you don't know how hard that was to do. So they wanted a 3-cent increase. I went along with it too. I had 2 on my right and 2 on my left. I was in the middle, and I had a lot to do with becoming 3 one way or the other. That was David Isley and Dennis over here. It reads, well, I think his name in a minute on one side. and then Harold and me on the other one. And we all work together on these issues, but anybody that thinks imposing taxes on somebody is good. You have to do some things, and so I done what I had to do, or what I thought was right. And it got stabilized, and it's been stabilized ever since. Now, some things that went on in Rockingham County. Duke Powell invested about $712 million in Eden. I think that was, it far overshadowed the loss of investment from Miller. And now they got that 300 jobs coming. That's going to help. Things are, I think, got a pretty good playing field. We're heading in the right direction right now.
And it looks like you're headed in the right direction too. As we summarize, I think you have a big anniversary coming up.
It'll be 61 years married to the same woman. We went steady about 3.5, so she was 15, I was 17. I'm coming up on my 82nd birthday. I reckon I found the right one.
I think you found the right one.
And
you did find the
I want
right
to add
one.
one more thing to that. She was a good looker too.
Congratulations, congratulations. You've got grit. Stanley, yes, Bobby Stanley. In fact, you said Bobby Ray Stanley.
Bobby Ray, I've run as Bobby R. Stanley.
Okay.
I got a granddaughter named Bobby Ray. It's
Okay.
I-E on the Bobby and a R-A-E on the Ray for her.
All right. You've got grit. Bobby Ray Stanley of Stoneville, North Carolina. I bet many of you out there in TV land know a Rockingham County citizen you described by saying, "You've got grit." What we'd like for you to do is to email a paragraph describing a Rockingham County citizen you think Spectrum 1304 and Rockingham County government should interview for You've Got Grit. Please email your paragraph to mscott@co.rockingham.nc.us. That's mscott@co.rockingham.nc.us. You've got grit. Bobby Ray Stanley of Rockingham County, North Carolina, from the beautiful town of Stoneville. Thank you so much for joining us. You've got grit.